Thanks very much to the organizers and to all of you for your staying power to be here till the end. I'm going to talk about personal health. I am not a physician, nor am I a PhD. I have no background at all in genetics or personalized medicine, but you'll see why I'm standing here, I think, by the end. The first thing I want to talk to you about very briefly is, yes, I have 2 children who were diagnosed in 1994 with a genetic disease, which brought my husband and I out of our former lives into this world in 1994, establishing a foundation, et cetera. There the kids are in 2011. I do pay them royalties to use their photographs and also have informed consent from them. My husband and I built a foundation. We did a whole lot of the kinds of things that traditional science do. We built blood and tissue bank. We built gene discovery tools. We found the gene. We patented the gene. We went on to build a diagnostic, and now we're into some early therapeutic kind of discoveries. All of that said, not because that's amazing and wonderful. There's a lot of disease foundations who do that kind of thing, even ones without background in science like my husband and I. But what we learned during that time was that this is not the way to do it. That we, all these years later, 15 years later, are still stuck. We still have no treatment for the disease the kids have, pseudoxanthoma elasticum, and that we are not going to be able to change the face of disease and health in this manner. I went on about 10 years ago to work with Genetic Alliance, which is a network of about 10,000 health organizations. 1,200 of these are disease advocacy organizations. So again, I very much come from that perspective. We're really looking at how do we enable intelligent, informed, individualized decision making, which is where we dovetail with the personalized medicine hue and cry. So our vision of the world is that we have a consumer-initiated and driven learning system that aggregates and analyzes information and that does discovery for prevention strategies, diagnostics, and treatment. And we're talking about the diagnosed, the not yet diagnosed, otherwise known as the public, and public health in general. And so we've heard today of a couple of these systems, and I'm really talking very much from a consumer, a public, a patient kind of point of view, and not from a partnership coming from an academic institution or from the government or from industry, but instead originating in the people, where many of the kinds of things that we do today in society come from. So we're looking at consumers who then become participants through a kind of conversion. And in the past, I think we always looked for that conversion to be because a disease came along. So, for example, Jamie Haywood and I share that we both had brothers, both named Stephen, who both had illnesses and died that were transformative in our lives. We don't wish for everybody to have that experience. We do wish for everybody to get the idea that we need to participate one and another with each other in collective, a kind of sense of being together around data, around the kinds of things we can learn. I think what we can see if we convert consumers to participants in this process, we'll get the kind of data collection and sharing that we need. I think we also are going to see a lot of network effects. Whole industries will grow up around this kind of consumer information, and certainly patients like me is an example of that. And then consumers will again iterate those systems, and we'll see next generation systems in that kind of collection. The part that needs support, that isn't an easy value proposition, that we're going to have to figure out a hybrid value chain for, is this participants driving the collection. And so I'm very interested in models that look at that. The paradigm we're seeing overall, of course, and all of you know this in many ways, is that the industrial age of old, with a win-loss and materials as what we needed as a raw substance, linear, kind of sequential workings of various mechanisms, all that's over. We're into an information age, but we haven't seen medicine or health move there very quickly. We've seen a lot of other industries move there very quickly, and certainly the informatics piece and the genomics pieces of medicine and health may have moved there, but we're much more interested in seeing the whole of health and wellness and prevention move into this paradigm shift as well. We do see social networks empowered by this shared genomics collective, and it's empowered by the long tail, and we can go on and discuss various books and writings and speakers on this topic. But again, we want to start to see this integrated and very much alive in the kinds of work that Genetic Alliance and others are doing. Again, patients like me as an example. There's lots of other networks, Susan Love's Army of Women, care pages, Facebook, et cetera, that we can see examples of consumers starting to move forward and take control of these issues. So for the average person, I think they automatically think, isn't it all about me? And isn't it an N of one? They don't walk around thinking, I need a collective, I need a cohort. So it's a harder thing to imagine as an individual than it is for some other things, I think. All health is already personal, so that if you talk to them about personalized medicine, they're saying, I already have personalized medicine. It's me and the doctor in that room. It's a perfect storm in a sense of what's public health and personal health. What are we responsible for as a collective for each other? Do you have to wait until you're diagnosed to care about those who are diagnosed, to care about doing the kinds of clinical trials and collections that we need? Healthcare by the average consumer is perceived to some degree as a whole functional system. I remember the day our kids were diagnosed 2 days before Christmas, I thought that I would walk in, get a diagnosis, and there would be a solution. I couldn't imagine that there wasn't. And then the second I couldn't imagine was that there wasn't somebody working on a solution. Well, with 7,000 Mendelian genetic disorders and thousands of other common conditions that we're now stratifying into rare conditions, we're going to have a lot of work cut out for us in the current system whereby we gatekeep this information and we work on it in kind of silos isn't really going to work. Genetics is not different. It's just a new piece of measurement in the whole. And I think the consumer always thinks medicine is evidence-based, and we all know that that's not true, but we do want to drive more toward an evidence basis. So what do personal health tools look like in 2012? Well, on the one hand, they're pretty advanced and we're kind of excited by them all, and we saw some of them today. On the other hand, they don't talk to each other terribly well, and they don't really give us the kind of integration that we're looking for. We will see some of that in the next generation, but I would like to see that certainly much quicker. This is my 23andMe readout, so an example of tools that I might use. I also use Daily Burn, which is a way to log everything that I eat and all my exercise that I also pair with my Fitbit and my Withing scale. And in the last year, I've lost 40 pounds and am able now to work much more vigorously on all this stuff. But again, I'm fairly privileged. I get to have a trainer and I get to use these technologies, and we need to make these much more simple and much more easily accessed. I manage my mother's health through technology. That's a kind of personal health system using tools that Medco has and that the center that she lives in, she has Alzheimer's disease, offers us. But again, they're not integrated one with another, and a lot of the kind of back-end coordination I have to do. Actually, the first person in our family to have an electronic medical record was our dog. And that is a really good thing because it makes it much easier for multiple family members to take care of the dog and to know what the dog had and when the dog needed it. But again, we really would like to see that much more in our own consumer health. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a world that's changing, and it's certainly one of the mega trends is consumer health care, the demand of consumers for better health. We have passed the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act in 2008. Genetic Alliance led that fight for 12.5 years. We're as happy as all the people in this picture were then. And again, that gives us a basis for not worrying about discrimination, but we need more. We have tools for harmonizing privacy and access because there are those who believe that privacy is a concern, certainly in some cultures and in some various populations. This is just one example of those kinds of granular things. We saw the Moffitt example. There's many others that start to allow recontact and granular protections or granular assent to do work on one's genome. Genetic Alliance established a biobank and registry that is lay managed and run based on the one that I established 15 years ago. My kids were very happy when we actually moved it out to a real bona fide facility, and they didn't have to say, why are there ovaries next to the ice cream in the freezer? Again, a platform though that's cross-disease, common and rare, allowing the people themselves who have the diseases to manage this resource in a way that makes the most sense in terms of driving the research. Genetic Alliance has built a tool called Trust It or Trash It, because one of the comments we get all the time is that if you start to empower consumers to have their information either from a 23andMe or Navigenics or from Moffitt or Mayo, what will they do with it? How will they know what's credible and what's not? And so we developed a tool that said who said it, when did they say it, and why did they say it, with a lot of other sub-layers that allow individuals to make decisions about what they're seeing and whether or not it's quality. And there's companies like Gina Mera, who is a startup company in this this area that are growing up that are looking at crowdsourcing to the clinical trial level or to group health studies that will let individuals bring that information forward and use it for their own use. I'm working on a project called That's My Data, in which we will rally individuals in a group to understand the power of putting their data into the commons. And this might be, I'm just going to make this up now, all people who have a Medtronic defibrillator. It might be people who have a insulin pump and monitor. We're building a portable legal consent in conjunction with Creative Commons. These data sets are being put into Synapse at Sage Bionetworks. We're looking at significant populations or conditions that would have real-world utility and show that if people started to crowdsource their own data, again, coming from the people, we'll see very much an acceleration in the kinds of things we've been looking at today. So my belief is that if we continue with the status quo, the way that the world is going, and even these kind of incremental steps that we're making that we're all really proud of, I'm proud of, but if we continue that way, that our loved ones will die before we have the solutions we need. I like this saying by Buckminster Fuller, essentially, that says you never change things by fighting the existing reality. You have to build a new model that makes the old one obsolete. So changing the paradigm has happened in a lot of other industries or sectors. We know the Arab Spring, AIDS, breast cancer, the kind of social injustice stuff that Amnesty International works on, the computer industry, publishing, music, and public access to taxpayer-funded journal articles are all examples of the public deciding that something was important enough for them to take action. I think it's a little harder in the arena of biomedical research, clinical trials, discovery, because it's hard to see what is the gratification. It's not immediate, it's much further term than, for example, overthrowing a government or getting access to things that you want to listen to or read. The public's role then, I think, in personalized medicine is to change the culture to one of truth and openness. I'm not suggesting that there's dishonesty in this culture. I am suggesting, though, that the truth will reveal itself more and more as we're able to aggregate hundreds of thousands, millions of phenotypes on a kind of dynamic basis to build and enroll in these registries and biobanks that would allow this aggregation over time, so we have longitudinal studies, to align the incentives for researchers, industry, clinicians, patients, et cetera, to come together, to take ownership of their data and participate in trials, and empowered a shared full Monty for all of us. Again, my quote, I really like this quote, I put it twice. I wonder if at the end of the day, what we're looking at is seeing how do we empower people to be full participants in their own health, whether it's as simple as controlling their cholesterol or their weight, and whether it's as advanced as looking at very complex diseases like we saw with myeloma, and that in fact each of us are going to have to be empowered to empower those around us so that we can see this groundswell that should come from the public. Thank you.